After the video game crash of 1983, interest in video games almost ceased to exist. The industry's value dropped by almost 97% thanks to an oversaturation of consoles and a lack of quality in games. Everyone thought that it's the end of video games as a whole. But luckily, Nintendo's Famicom, released in 1983 in Japan and in the West in 1985, known as Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES, luckily led to recovery of the industry, making sure to avoid the mistake its predecessors made thanks to Nintendo's seal of quality, affirming that the game was tested and approved by Nintendo. This spawned many long-running franchises from Nintendo, such as Super Mario, Kirby, Metroid, and the subject of this video, The Legend of Zelda. Released in 1986 as a launch title for the Family Computer Disk System in Japan, a disc-based attachment for the original Famicom, allowing for better sound and features like progress saving, The Legend of Zelda quickly became one of Nintendo's biggest successes, selling a whopping 6.5 million copies overall. The game released a year later in 1987 on the gold cartridge in the West. It was also the first cartridge to boost an internal battery, allowing you to save your progress, something cartridge-based systems would rely on until the release of the Nintendo DS. The Legend of Zelda would feature a vast amount of innovative and groundbreaking elements, such as a huge open world, rewarding exploration with things like health upgrades, new items, merchants, and various secrets hidden throughout the world of Hyrule, as well as dungeons, puzzle-like environments that must be cleared to proceed towards the end of the game, a new Game Plus function which changes up item and dungeon locations and even dungeon layouts to offer a unique second experience, and the aforementioned progress saving, allowing you to simply save your game and proceed later, instead of relying on the old password system games would use in the past. The Legend of Zelda would proceed to be a huge hit for Nintendo, spawning many sequels throughout the years, and even becoming, for some of Nintendo's future consoles, their launch titles. With a history this rich and vast, I decided to re-experience the series, and for that, I decided to play The Legend of Zelda for the NES. Development for The Legend of Zelda began in fall of 1984, with Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka taking over the roles as director and game designer. Takashi Tezuka wrote the story and script for the game, and thanks to Keiji Terui, a screenwriter for anime such as Dragon Ball, a backstory was written for the manual, inspired by conflicts from medieval Europe. A long, long time ago, the world was in chaos. In the midst of this chaos, in a little kingdom in the land of Hyrule, a legend was being handed down from one generation to generation, the legend of the Triforce, golden triangles possessing mystical powers. One day, an evil army attacked this peaceful little kingdom and stole the Triforce of power. This army was led by Ganon, the powerful Prince of Darkness, who sought to plunge the world into fear and darkness under his rule. Fearing his wicked rule, Zelda, the princess of this kingdom, split up the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 fragments and hid them throughout the realm to save the last remaining Triforce from the clutches of the evil Ganon. At the same time, she commanded her most trustworthy nursemaid Impa to secretly escape into the land and go find a man with enough courage to destroy the evil Ganon. Upon hearing this, Ganon grew angry, imprisoned the princess, and sent out a party in search of Impa. Braving forests and mountains, Impa fled for her life from her pursuers. As she reaches her very limit of her energy, she found herself surrounded by Ganon's evil henchmen. Cornered. What could she do? But wait, all was not lost. A young lad appeared. He skillfully drove off Ganon's henchmen and saved Impa from a fate worse than death. His name was Link. During his travels, he had come across Impa and Ganon's henchmen. Impa told Link the whole story of the Princess Zelda and the evil Ganon. Burning with a sense of justice, Link resolved to save Zelda, but Ganon was a powerful opponent. He held the Triforce of Power, and so, in order to fight off Ganon, Link had to bring the scattered 8 fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom together to rebuild the mystical triangle. If he couldn't do that, there would be no chance Link could fight his way into Death Mountain, where Ganon lived. Can Link destroy Ganon and save Princess Zelda? Only your skill can answer that question. Good luck. Use the Triforce wisely. The manual offers a huge amount of useful information, accompanied by beautiful art, giving the manual a distinctive and unique feeling to it. I highly recommend giving it a read. It is full of fun things to discover. A perfect companion for a fantastical adventure. The development team worked initially on 2 titles, Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, with the intention of separating the ideas. Mario Bros. Would focus on a linear, high-score based adventure, where Zelda would be the non-linear, exploration-based adventure, not focusing on a high score, but instead of a feeling of incompletion, trying to find every secret and collecting every item and heart piece. People in Japan had a hard time knowing what to do and how to progress in The Legend of Zelda, but Miyamoto insisted on his game design, on making people explore the world and exchange adventures with other players. While the player initially would start with their sword in the inventory, the design team later changed it so that the player has to enter a cave with an old man stating, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this." An encouragement to interact with other players. The concept of player interaction was what led eventually to the creation of Animal Crossing, a game based solely on communication and social interactions. A lot of inspiration for the design of The Legend of Zelda was drawn from Miyamoto's childhood around Kyoto, going out to explore the area and always finding new things. From an interview, Miyamoto once said, "When I was a child, I went hiking and found a lake. It was quite a surprise for me to stumble upon it. When I traveled around the country without a map, trying to find my way, stumbling on amazing things as I went, I realized how it felt to go on an adventure like this. These experiences are felt through the entire game, always having new areas, shops, and secrets to find." Tezuka also wrote the setting of Hyrule based on Western fantasy, such as Tolkien's Lord of the Rings novels. Koji Kondo composed the game's 5 songs, though not without any difficulties. He initially planned to use Maurice Ravel's Bolero as the title theme. In Japan, music is publicly accessible after 50 years of the composer's death, but unfortunately, the title theme had to be changed due to Ravel's death only being 40 years ago at the time in 1985. This led to Kondo having to write an entirely new overworld theme within one day, which led to the creation of the iconic theme that is used throughout the entire series to this very day. The game was originally released in Japan in February of 1986 as a launch title for the Famicom Disk System add-on, paired with a re-release of Super Mario Bros. And a few other games. To take full advantage, The Legend of Zelda was shipped out on a floppy disk, thanks to its increased size of a whopping 128 kilobytes. A way to save costs due to cartridges in that size being significantly more expensive. All of the text was delivered in katakana, which primarily relates more to foreign words due to the still limited size available on those floppy disks. Thanks to Disk Add-on, it was possible to save your game, while also delivering the ability for more complex sound effects, such as Link's sword beam, or the growls of dungeon bosses. These sadly had to be altered for the eventual cartridge release. This version of the game also made use of the built-in microphone of the Famicom's controller, allowing the player to defeat certain enemies by blowing or yelling at them. Imagine sitting in front of your TV yelling at your enemies to die. I bet some parents would have been concerned. The American manual still mentions how these enemies hate loud noises. The later released cartridge version would use a different form of chip as well as a battery-powered RAM, which let the player save the game without the need of the disc add-on. With the North American release in 1987, Nintendo decided to feature a small card out of the box, showing off the gold-colored cartridge, a privilege only The Legend of Zelda and its sequel had. Look at this glorious cartridge. I bet it drew in lots of children's eyes, screaming that this game is something special. Anyone who bought the game could send their warranty card to Nintendo, making them a member of the Fun Club, which would then send out newsletter for free. While these started out at only 4 pages, later issues would grow up to 32 pages. These would offer valuable tips for various secrets in the games. The mailing list grew so largely that Nintendo decided in early 1988 to create their own proper magazine, Nintendo Power. A hugely successful magazine that ran all the way from 1988 up to 2012, spanning over 285 volumes, full of news about upcoming Nintendo titles and tips and tricks for games. While Nintendo didn't create many ads at the time, the budget for ads became some of the most expensive in the industry, with a budget of up to $5 million per ad, which would nowadays be around $40 million. The Legend of Zelda ended up being both a huge success both with critics as well as commercially, selling 1 million copies in Japan alone on its first day, as well as being the first game selling over 1 million copies in North America, selling a total of 3 million copies in the US alone by 1990. Critics praised its graphics, setting, while also mentioning its fantastic exploration and dungeon puzzle design, which led to reviewers recommending the NES and The Legend of Zelda over PC RPGs such as the Wizardry or Ultima series. But with all this said, I think it's time to experience and dive into The Legend of Zelda. Many years ago, Prince Darkness Ganon stole one of the Triforce with power. Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce with Wisdom. She divided it into 8 units to hide it from Ganon before she was captured. Go find the 8 units link to save her. Fun fact, Zelda's name is based on the wife of novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald. Miyamoto liked the sound of the name, so he took it into the adventure. Before we can start adventure, we have to name our character. What the canon name for the protagonist is Link, a name representing a blank state in which the player can project themselves. It is possible to enter your own name. Once you enter your name, you start in an open field with a cave in front of you. Inside you meet an old man saying it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. With that we obtain the sword level 1. The Legend of Zelda features a total of 3 swords. The sword which we just obtained, the white sword, which doubles the damage, and the magic sword, which deals double the amount of damage of the white sword. These are hidden in the world, unlocked by the amount of total hearts you have. If at full life, we can also shoot out a ranged attack. So we want to be at full life at all costs, as it reduces the risk of dying. We also start off with a shield, allowing us to block certain attacks from the front, like spears or rocks. While the manual guides you towards the very first dungeon, nothing stops you at exploring the world. The first enemies we encounter are Tactites, Octoroks, and Levers. All of them have their own little bit of backstory and movesets, making each enemy unique and stand out. Enemies can drop things such as rupees, the currency of the Legend of Zelda, or bombs, which we can use to fight at monsters, or more importantly, bomb open hidden walls. This allows us to find caves with heart pieces or money. There's also a cave with an old man handing over a letter. This one allows us to access potion shops throughout the map, where we can buy 1 out of 2 potions. A single-use potion that is blue, and a potion we can use twice, which is red. We sadly can only carry a potion at a time, so it's only really worth to get the 2-use potion. Some shops in the overworld sell the blue candle, an item allowing us to burn on enemies or certain bushes, allowing us to find even more secrets. Some of them are incredibly well hidden, and I can't see anyone being able to find them without some sort of play guide or massive trial and error that would consume hours upon hours of playtime. With 5 hearts, we can claim the white sword, boosting our damage significantly, and with enough rupees, we can go to a shop to buy the magic shield, allowing us to also block spells as well as the blue ring, that reduces incoming damage by half. With that, it is time to head towards the first dungeon, the Eagle. While we could tackle dungeons in any order we like, it is recommended to go to them in order. Each dungeon has a distinctive and unique layout. The Eagle is full of enemies, such as the Kise, a bat-like enemy, and Stalfos, skeletons with a sword in each hand. While these don't pose much of a threat, it is advised to keep your distance and take them out quickly. Certain rooms store things like keys, allowing us to open locked doors. Not always is opening doors needed, there are secret walls that we can blow up to find passages, allowing us to save keys for later dungeons. There are also movable blocks, allowing to access staircases or open secret passages. In this dungeon, we also find the bow. Shops carry the arrow, which allows us to shoot. While we have infinite arrows, each shot costs you a bit of rupees. It's not the best weapon, and there are only very specific niche cases where it's needed to get used. Each dungeon also has a map and a compass, allowing you to see map layout fully and pointing you towards the Triforce piece of each dungeon. Here's a fun detail. If you're close to the boss room, you can hear it screaming. The first we encounter is Aquamantis, a type of dragon that some call a unicorn. Its weak spot is its horn that is pretty easy to hit, and its attacks are blockable with a magic shield. With its defeat we get a piece of the heart and obtain the first Triforce piece. With our first dungeon cleared, we get put back in front of it, allowing us to proceed towards the next dungeon, passing new areas and enemies such as the Peaheads or Molebiln. Our second dungeon is the Moon, filled with monsters such as ropes, gels, and Gorilla. This dungeon doesn't feature any items and is fairly simple, but it features the iconic boss Dodongo, who goes down after eating a few bombs. Look at this derpy little guy. With its defeat, we can claim the second piece of the Triforce, which means that it's time to head to the third dungeon, the Manji. This place is full with dark nuts and gels. Here we can find a raft, allowing us to swim across the sea and lakes if we enter certain docks. This will come in handy later. Here we also encounter bubbles, wee little balls that are spirits of the dead. These fly across rooms and if hit, make us unable to attack for a bit. Luckily they don't deal damage, but they are still annoying. At the end we encounter the Mandala, a large man-eating flower. We have to break each of the 4 heads to destroy it. With each defeated head it increases in speed, a fairly annoying enemy. With its defeat we can claim the third Triforce piece and we can move on. Back on the overworld, we can use the raft to access new areas, allowing us to find even more heart pieces, and the 4th dungeon, the snake. Here we encounter enemies such as the virus. These devils control the Kisses. Here we can also find the step ladder, allowing us to bypass gaps, tiles with water or lava. Help me step bro, I'm stuck. Here we can also encounter the Mantella as a normal enemy, which is super annoying. At the end we encounter Gleeok, a 2 to 4 headed dragon. We have to cut off each of its head, which then proceeds to fly around attacking us until each head is separated. Kinda creepy. With that, we of course get our 4th Triforce piece. Back on the overworld, we can find new secrets and reach another cave, allowing us to get a magical sword if we have 12 hearts. Our last weapon upgrade, giving us a huge damage boost. In the overworld, we can also obtain a power bracelet, allowing us to push rocks our way, allowing us to enter a cave with 3 passages, each leading us to a different area. The way to the 5th dungeon is a bit tricky. To get to the entrance, you have to walk through a repeating area. Just walk up 4 times and you're in front of the dungeon. Easy. Dungeon 5, the Lizard, is where the game slowly increases its difficulty. It's full of Paul's voices, a monster that takes a lot of hits. In the original Japanese version, you could yell into the controller microphone to defeat them. Sadly, the Western version did not have a microphone, so we just gotta hit it a few times. The manual even refers to its hating loud noises. We also encounter Gypto, mummy-like enemies. Those luckily aren't much of a challenge. This is the first dungeon where we encounter rooms only accessible through bombs. This is important as there are rooms we have to go through to progress. Pretty evil. We can also find a merchant hidden behind a secret wall selling us bombs for 100 rupees. Those will come in handy. At the end, we encounter the Dig Doggo, a big cluster of sea urchins. The trick is to play the flute that we obtained, shrinking the boss down so we can defeat it in 2 hits. With that we get the 5th Triforce piece. So, let's talk about the flute. With it we can travel to previously cleared dungeons in sequential order. If Link faces north or east, he warps the next dungeon in sequence, while facing south or west, warps Link to the previous dungeon in sequence. Kinda neat, but never something that's really worth using in my opinion, as the overworld as a whole is rather small. With that out of the way, we can immediately head towards the 6th dungeon, the Dragon. This is where the game gets really tough. Here we get introduced to 2 types of whiz ropes, the yellow ones that teleports around and shoot projectiles when they reappear, and the blue ones that move around and shoot projectiles at random, sometimes multiple back to back. They are always in big quantities and do huge amounts of damage. Not a good time overall. It doesn't help that the game also introduces statues that spit out magic projectiles. This place was the first time where I had to pop a potion, and this sound is going to haunt me in my dreams. Here we also encounter the Gleeok with 3 heads this time, but this isn't a real challenge at this point of the game. We also have some like-likes here, enemies that see your magic shield if they touch you. This dungeon's gimmick is that we have to clear all enemies in certain rooms to move a block that makes a staircase appear. Beneath one of them is the magic wand, allowing us to shoot our ranged projectiles for free. This is honestly way better than a bow as it is not consuming rupees. At the end we encounter Gomer, who might just be the easiest boss in the game. Watch this. One arrow is all it takes to defeat it. With that we can claim the 6th Triforce piece. Before we can enter the 7th dungeon, we have to enter a shop to buy an enemy bait. This will be important later. Once at a specific lake, we can play the flute again, which lowers the water, allowing us to enter the 7th dungeon, the demon. The demon is a large dungeon with a huge amount of locked doors. Lucky for us, there are a lot of walls that we can blow up, allowing us to keep a lot of keys for the next dungeon. Inside we end up facing a lot of Gorilla. One room contains a Gorilla that isn't hostile towards us. The fires next to it shoot at us if we attack it. The trick here is to throw the bait in front of it, which allows us to pass by. Further in we end up finding the red candle, an upgrade for our blue candle. With this upgrade we can use the candle more than one time per room, allowing us to effectively use it in combat. We also encounter a few more dig doggers inside until we eventually reach the final room with our Aquamenters. This one is an exact copy of the first one we encountered and can be easily dealt with at this point of the game, requiring at max 2 hits. With its defeat we can claim our 7th Triforce piece and head straight for our 8th dungeon, which is hidden beneath a bush that we have to burn down with a candle. This allows us to enter the lion. The lion is another huge step up, not only in enemies but also in layout complexity. This place is full of dark nuts, enemies that we can only damage from behind. These enemies move in incredibly random ways, making it hard to hit them without getting hit yourself. Inside we can find 2 items, the magic book, an upgrade for the magic wand, allowing us to shoot out flames, a huge improvement to an already decent weapon, and a more important magic key. This one has infinite uses, making all keys obsolete and allowing us to skip a lot of rooms. We also find more manhandler and another Goma, which this time takes 3 arrows to the eye. At the end we face a Galeok with 4 heads this time. This once again isn't much of a challenge. With that we get the 8th Triforce piece and it's finally time to ascend to Death Mountain. Death Mountain is the biggest and meanest dungeon of the Legend of Zelda. Shaped like a huge skull, Death Mountain is a massive labyrinth with tons of ways. In the first room there's an old man only letting us enter we have all 8 Triforce pieces. Inside we face the strongest enemies the game has to offer, like the Padra, the group of massive eyes where you have to take out every single eye individually before you can destroy the center one. We luckily picked up the magic key allowing us to skip huge chunks of Death Mountain. Inside we can also find the red ring, reducing incoming damage to a quarter, and the silver arrow. This dungeon is brutal, and dying a lot here is normal. At the end we finally encounter Ganon, our final fight in the game. He immediately turns invisible, appears at random spots and shoots a magic projectile. He always goes after Patter, so we wait where he appears and hit him. After the 3rd hit he turns brown, and after a hit with our silver arrow he turns into ash. With that we can finally save Princess Zelda and the Kingdom of Hyrule is saved. And with that we finish the Legend of Zelda, a magical and epic adventure. A massively influential title that to this day stands out as a titan among RPGs, even over 30 years later. This game is something special both in terms of gameplay as well as in design, offering a unique fantasy adventure and putting down the future foundation for more Zelda adventures, full of memorable and increasingly more complex and fun dungeons. While the game sure is stated, it is still a fun and noteworthy game that I think is worth playing even after all this time. After all, The Legend of Zelda is a lifetime adventure. After its initial success, Nintendo realized how important The Legend of Zelda is, beginning to immediately work on a direct sequel to it. And while I'm personally not the biggest fan of it, it is still an impressive game. But I think this is a story for another time. With that said, this was my video on The Legend of Zelda, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed working on it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the future for more adventures. Until next time.